Right, hello, welcome back to another Villa on Tour video. Today is the international break, and what better content is there to do than panic and go for a Q&A. I'm joined by Simon. Simon, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to chatting about all things Villa.
Yeah, so I put a few questions on Instagram and Twitter asking for your guys' questions. So we've got a few, we're going to go through them, just a general chat about the Villa, basically, a catch-up, because of course it is the international break. So I'll ask you actually, are you buzzing for the World Cup? Are you asked?
I think it's going to be a strange one. I think off the back of England's poor performances really last time out, and then heading into this Winter World Cup, I think it's going to be a strange one, and it'll be interesting to see how England line up, really. But yeah, a bit of a weird one. I don't like the break in the middle of the season, but I suppose it's something different. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
It is going to be really, really weird. You're obviously used to going to beer gardens and chilling out in the sun during a World Cup, but now you're going to be all Christmassy with your Christmas tree up, hot chocolate in hand. It's going to be very, very bizarre. But we'll get into the first question then. So this question comes off Twitter from Craig. It says, what would you prefer? Poor performances and wins, or good performances and losses/draws? And I think that's quite a topical question based on how poor, boring, slow the Southampton game was, but it was a win. I think as a football fan who goes to games, you want to see your team win. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's a winning game. It's a winning business, and I think it's a bit of a silly question. Simon, do you agree? I think I'd rather win games. I don't really care how. If you're winning games, there's going to be some element of prettiness to it. So I think, obviously, we'd just take the poor performances and win.
I think in the short term, yeah. I think absolutely. I think if you're in a situation that Villa have been in where we're struggling to pick up points and results, then in the short term you sort of throw the sort of playing style out the window. But I think looking forward, if you've got a project and you know you've got a manager who you actually believe in, then you need to have a system, you need to have a decent style of play, because you know obviously we've got 42,000 fans coming to Villa Park every week and 20,000 people on the waiting list, and so I don't think that would remain the case if we had sort of no identity moving forward and we were playing such negative football. And so I think you have to look at it two ways. Obviously you want to win games, but you have to try and get to a point where you're doing it the right way as well. I think recently that Gerard's had to go back to it purely for the poor performances and the poor results, and had to try and take things back to basics. But you'd like a mix of both if you could have it, because obviously there's going to be games like Man City, Liverpool, etc., where you can't play free flowing open football, and you do have to sort of resort to more sort of pragmatic tactics. But overall, I think you'd prefer to see a mix of things, really.
Yeah, I think there's 100% got to be a balance there. I think, especially with the players that we've got, it really, really frustrates me that, especially this season, we're just not seeing that encouraging signs. Like, look at the talent we've got. It's ridiculous. Buendia, Coutinho, Watkins, Kamara, there's Champions League level players in there. We've got a very, very good squad, and it's just frustrating to see that there's no signs that we're trying to play that attacking football. There's a question later on about Watkins and Ings, and, you know, they're not potentially scoring enough goals as they probably should do, but there's the players around, and they're just a lack of creativity. And the last few times I've been to Villa Park, or this season overall, I just haven't been excited, and that's a real shame, because we've seen it a couple of times under Gerard. There's a question in a little bit about the best performances under Gerard, and we have seen it a couple of times. I just think, you know, especially this season, it's been so slow and dire, and there's no encouragement there, so hopefully that can come in the next few weeks as well. The next question actually comes from Jamie. There was a few questions about this, the women's team at the weekend. Do some coverage on the women's game at the weekend. Simon, you were there. Villa were 2-0 up against Manchester City, then losing 3-2, and then they went on to win 4-3. It looks unbelievable. I've watched the highlights. Simon, you were there, as I said. How was it, mate?
It was really good. It was really, really good. I mean, to be fair to both teams, there was some real quality out in the field, and I think from Villa's point of view, that they played football that only, you know, the men's team can only sort of dream of, to be honest with you, and having that sort of early 2-goal lead. And obviously, yeah, they did let Man City back in, but I think I was listening to the radio beforehand on the way down to Villa Park, and they were saying how Man City are in a bit of a transitional period. I think they replaced a lot of the players over the summer, and so they were sort of bigging Villa up to get a result, and I thought, nah, it's not going to happen. You know, they were sort of hammered last season when they played Man City, but I've got to say they thoroughly deserved it, and there were some really standout performances and a couple of absolutely cracking goals as well.
Yeah, I think Rachel Daly scored an absolutely unbelievable goal. She's a new signing, I believe. She was like on the half turn. It was in the first half. She was like back to goal and swiveled, and it was a great finish. So if you ever want to go to the women's games, I need to get to more, to be fair. I'll hold my hands up. I want to go to more women's games, especially when they're at Villa Park. So definitely, if you're watching this, if you want to get involved when the men's team aren't playing, definitely go and watch the women's games, because at the moment they're more exciting than the men's games, let's just say that. The next question comes from Azaria. I hope I'm saying that right. Best performance under Gerrard and worst performance under Gerrard. I think let's start with the worst and then we can end on the best. I think worst performances for me this season, Bournemouth and Palace. That Bournemouth one, I mean, I've said it so many times. If you watch that video, we were just in shock because there were such high expectations. Although pre-season wasn't the most flattering of pre-seasons, my expectations were still so high based on what Purslow, the manager, the players have said going into the new season. My expectations were very, very high. And that Bournemouth game, we didn't just lose, so it was absolutely horrible, wasn't it?
It was, and it was one of them games where we ended up getting bullied by the opposition, really, wasn't it? It was two sort of long balls into the box, one from a corner and then one from a free kick, and like,
how many times have we been bullied? It's
well,
so frustrating.
That's the problem. It was big Kiefer Moore up front, wasn't it? He absolutely dominated us, and that was the game when obviously we didn't have Mings playing. So we didn't have that height in there either. So that was bad. It was bad, but I don't know. For me, I think. See, I've reflected on this, and like, even though you wouldn't think so looking at the result, but I felt Palace was worse than Bournemouth, and it was purely for the fact of how pulled all over the park we were, how run ragged we were. It was like we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. It was like defenders were all the way up the other end of the pitch, and there was like midfielders trying to cover play at spaces where there was massive gaps, and it just felt like every single time Palace had the ball, they were going to score. And to be honest with you, that day 3-1. It flattered us, if I'm being honest with you, that day. It could have been 6 or 7 that day comfortably. And I think I look back, that was the worst tactical setup of a Villa side I've seen for a very long time, especially under Gerard. And so for me, the worst probably would be Palace.
It was horrible. It was horrible. We'll be a little bit more positive though. We'll go on to the best performance. I think we always talk about when Gerrard first came in, he went back to basics. And that, I mean, the first game against Brighton, Gerrard's first game was good. But I think the second game, we'll go back to Selhurst Park, the Crystal Palace away game when we won 2-1, we were absolutely brilliant, especially in that first half. Nakamba, it was just absolutely reborn. He seems to have disappeared massively now, Nakamba, but he was fantastic. Matt Targett scored. We were just playing some unbelievable football in that first half. McGinn scored a screamer in the second half, obviously, to win it. But that was unbelievable. I think there was a run at the start of 2022 as well, where we smashed Southampton 4-0, beat Leeds away, beat Brighton away, where we just looked like so composed and there was a clear plan, especially on the road. We were very, very good. I remember there was a stat going around where Villa had one of the best records on the road at some points last season. That probably stands out to me. That little mini run there, Southampton, Leeds and Brighton, that is what I reflect on in probably Gerrard's best performances for me.
Yeah, it was probably Leeds away for me as well, I think. That win was, I mean, Leeds were poor at the time. It was Jesse Marsh's first game, wasn't it? Leeds were poor, but I mean, we had a very solid back line that day, and we sort of dominated the midfield as well, which is something that Villa don't do very often. And it was sort of clinical finishing that day as well. We didn't create a massive amount, but we were just clinical in what we did have, and I think that's up there. But I don't know whether it's how bad we've been is making me think really negative, but I don't feel like we've ever been really like breathtaking under Gerrard, if I'm being honest. I think there's been some good...
Especially against a half-decent team as well. All the ones we seem to have are against teams who are crap. So I want to see... I mean, the Man City was something that we haven't seen under Gerrard so far a couple of weeks ago, the 1-1. But I want to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like last season, it was like the team... You know, we were the Neely team all the while. You know, we played well against City twice, we played well against Liverpool twice, but we didn't actually pick up any results. But I don't know. I don't feel like it's ever been like... I don't think I've ever come away thinking, oh my God, we look absolutely brilliant. I don't think that's ever happened under Gerrard, if I'm being totally honest. I think, to be fair, it's felt like a long time in general with Villa when I felt like that. Like I say, there were some good wins. I mean, the Palace away and Brighton away was good wins, but they were sort of, you know, pragmatic. We were sort of tight at the back and sort of, you know, we were clinical with our finishing. I don't think we were absolutely extraordinary, if I'm being honest, but I think Leeds probably 3-0 at Ellen Road in the manager's first game. I don't think that's a bad result. So yeah, it would be that one.
Yeah, we just want to see excitement. I want to be so excited. That's just what I want to see. I want to see some really fast football, and yeah, it's just not coming. The next question actually comes from Villa Spots on Instagram. It's not a Villa related question as such. It's more about us. What was your first Villa game? Mine was 3-2 Sheffield Wednesday back in 1996. Townsend won it, says Villa Spots. I'll start. Mine was Wigan at home at Villa Park. I was in the Holt End in 2011. We won 2-0. Agbonlahor scored a screamer, and then Darren Bent at the start of the second half. I remember walking past Victor Moses in the car park, and I was absolutely buzzing because, like I said, that was my first game. But yeah, my first game was a win. How about you, Si?
The absolute glory days under Alex McLeish for your first game.
Yeah, Alex McLeish was my first manager. How horrible is that?
My first game was I believe it was an FA Cup third round game, and it was in January of 2000. It was actually the year we got to the FA Cup final. So I would have been how old have I been? About 8 or something like that, 7 or 8, something like that. And yeah, we played Darlington in the FA Cup third round at Villa Park. Funny story, actually. We were supposed to play Man United. What a surprise! We were drawn against Man United again in the third round of the FA Cup, but they were away in the World Club Championship, so they gave their place away in the FA Cup that year, and so we played Darlington instead. I don't know why we played Darlington, but we did, and we beat them 2-1. I think Carboni got one. I'm not sure who got the other one. I want to say it was Dublin, but I'm not 100% sure. But we won 2-1, and that was my first game. And then I started to go to a few more after that. And then I got my first season ticket the year after. But yeah, that was my first game, 2-1 win, and Villa on the road to FA Cup glory until we lost in the final.
That went well, yeah. Darlington, unbelievable. Next question, again off Instagram, is favourite Villa cult hero. Mine's Tony Moon. I'll start. I think mine is probably Andy Vyman. I don't think he was ever, considered one of Villa's best ever players, nowhere near that level, but I don't know, there was just something about him. I love the celebration. I just liked everything about him. And by the way, even still now, he's absolutely smashing it in the Championship for Bristol City. But, a couple of goals against Liverpool. I know he scored against Baggies in that 4-3 game as well. I don't know, I just really liked him. And then the other one is a pretty obvious one in Alan Hutton, purely because of that goal against Blues. But yeah, I'll go with Andy Vyman.
Yeah, I think mine's a bit of an obvious one, and I think a lot of people would pick this one, but I'd go for John Carew, and I just loved him. I love the bloke, and he's one of them players where I used to feel that he could have been so much better than what he was if he'd have put that little bit more effort in. I mean, I think overall, just the deal we had to bring him to Villa Park, he was on a free basically because we swapped him for Milan Barros, who was doing nothing at the time, and he came in and he was just unbelievable. He had that brilliant relationship with the fans. He was unplayable on his day, absolutely unplayable, and I think the best. I think the best memory for me, and this just summed John Carew up, was they were 2-0 down against Reading away in the quarter final of the FA Cup, and we were terrible first half, and John Carew led that. He was woeful that first half. He could hardly trap the ball. And then second half, I don't know what had happened at half time, but second half he comes out and he scores a hat trick, and then Villa win 4-2. And it's like, it was the most John Carew thing to ever happen, that was. But yeah, I just loved him. I thought he had such a good rapport with the fans. He had such a good relationship with Gabby up front. And those were good days. And you look back at it and you just think, God, if he was just like that all the time, if he was on that all the time, he could have been like one of the best strikers Villa ever had. But I mean, he'll go down in the history. I think he still scored about 48, 49 goals. I think he did, which is decent. But he could have been so much better. But yeah, John Carew for me.
Yeah, there's that photo, isn't there, of him and Prince William in the playoff final, just embracing each other. Just what a photo that is. Next question again comes off Instagram from Stephen. He says, are our expectations as fans still way too high? And I'll start off by saying no. Absolutely not. I think what does this for me is the fact that every single interview that we see on Villa TV or whatever it is Europe, Europe, Europe. And no matter when it is, whether it was pre-season, but even now, whenever a new player comes in, they're sold on the project and it's Europe. We want to get Europe back. We want to get Aston Villa back in Europe. So the fact that we came 14th last season and we're absolutely struggling to get anywhere near the top half at the start of this season, and there are absolutely no signs, no encouragement that we're going to get anywhere near it, is what's frustrating for me, because there's ambition at the club. Everybody talks about it. The proof's in the pudding, to be honest, and we're just not seeing it. So I don't think our expectations are high at all. I think we've got realistic ones and we're just not being fed what we've been promised, basically.
And I agree, and I think Villa fans I think we're always sort of accused of being this really difficult fan base to play in front of, and it's terrible to play at Villa Park, it's so difficult, the atmosphere is really against you, and there's the expectations are so high. And see, I disagree with that. I think Villa fans are some of the most patient around, if I'm being honest with you. I think some of the stuff we've endured over the years, I think Villa fans are some of the most patient around, if I'm being totally honest. But as you say, it's the rhetoric that comes from the club all the time, and it's good to have ambition, but you've got to be realistic with it. And I look at Villa right now and I think we're absolute miles away from Europe, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think we're anywhere near it. And to be fair, I said that at the start of the season. I said we'd be sort of mid-table start of the season. Didn't think we'd have such a bad start, but I still didn't think we're going to be anywhere near Europe at the start of the season. I just think, yeah, you're right, from the club, it's, we're targeting Europe and, we should be in Europe, etc. And then I just think we need to have a bit of a reality check. This club hasn't been in Europe since 2009. And I mean, it's an awfully long time. We haven't got any divine right to be there. There's a lot of other clubs in the mix as well ahead of us, and I'd rather the club be sort of, you might say it's been sort of, despondent, but I'd rather the club be, just be realistic with their aims and say, we're striving to get to that top 10 and let's see what happens after that. But all the talk about Europe and all the talk about, we want to be one of the top 4 clubs in the league and stuff, it's too much for me. It's I find it irritating. I just wish it was more realistic.
Yeah, it is really frustrating because, like you said, we are so clearly miles off it. And I think you look at clubs like Brighton, I know they've just lost their manager, Brentford, Crystal Palace, who battered us early on in the season, they just seem to be so far ahead of where we are. Forget the size of Villa, the tradition, we've played in Europe before, let alone it being quite a long time. These clubs just seem to be that step in front of us, and it's just so frustrating because it's always for Villa, we'll have a pre-season, we'll do it next year. How many times have we heard that? Like, we came 14th last season, let's just chill out. I think 10th would be, yes, at the start of the season I was saying, let's go 9th, we can get Europe, but, let's be current. I think if we could get 10th, I'd be buzzing with that. We came 14th last season. I'll say again, that is simply not good enough. I think the playing staff are very good. We've got very good players. It's up to the manager now to get the best out of them. That squad is very, very good. And I think that squad is, without doubt, good enough to get top 10. I just think proof's in the pudding, and manager, get the best out of this very, very, very good squad.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with you. I think we've got a good squad. On paper, we've got a very good squad anyway. I just think we're a bit unbalanced though, and I think if you look at, we struggle to get Buendia in the team, which says it all for me when he's our sort of 38 million record signing, and the reason being is because we've got Coutinho as well. It feels like we've got too many of the same sort of similar players, and then we've not got enough pace either, and so it feels a little bit unbalanced to me. And so you look on paper and you think, they've got a really good side. But Premier League's a tough league, and you have to have your tactics spot on. Something we haven't done this season at all. And for your tactics to be spot on, you need to have players playing in correct positions, and it's something I'm not sure Villa ever really have. I mean, we chop and change so much. We've had about 5 or 6 defensive partnerships this season already, and then we've got Coutinho and Bailey and Buendia all rotating, and Ramsey going forward, and then Watkins in, and then Ings in, and it just feels messy. I'd love us to go like an unchanged 11 for 5 or 6 games. I'd love that, but I don't think it's ever possible because of the side that we've got, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right, and I think saying that Villa are very messy at the moment sums it up perfectly. The next question comes from Villa Opinions on Twitter. Says, keeping in mind our strongest 11 fully fit squad, choose 3 players that you would want to improve on and which players you would replace them with. So forget money, forget all this, that and the other. If you could pick 3 positions right now to improve on, we've just mentioned we've got a very good squad, but forget that. If we could pick 3 positions, Si, to improve on, where are you starting?
I feel like we need to improve in midfield still. Whatever's happened to John McGinn this season, I'm not too sure. Although the last couple of seasons, I'm not too sure. I feel like we need to improve in midfield still. A real top midfielder. I think I'd spend a decent amount of money if we had it on a top midfielder. I know we got Dendoncker coming, but obviously he's a bit more of a stopper rather than a sort of box to box real sort of enforcer type of midfielder. So I'd look at that. I think. Striker. I like Ollie Watkins, and I like Danny Ings as well. But I'm not. Well, they aren't your 15 goal, 20 goal a season man, are they? And so, but again, you're sort of shopping in a very sort of limited market. I don't think that there's many strikers out there, to be honest. And I think every single club's looking for the same, and so that's difficult. And then probably the other area for me, I've just said it in the last question actually about sort of balance to the side. I still feel like we're lacking a winger. Like the only winger we've got is Leon Bailey, and so I think I'd look at that as well. I was tempted to mention a centre half because I think obviously with Carlos's injury and we're back with Konza and Mings etc. But I only look back to a couple of seasons ago back in lockdown when Konza and Mings were absolutely extraordinary together, and I think they've got the ability to do it. I really do. I think it's a lot of it's about confidence and getting that sort of confidence back and playing themselves back into form. But yeah, I think I'd go with that. I'd go with winger, striker and midfielder for me.
Yeah, I'd like a winger as well. That was one of mine, purely because we were looking at Sarr, and that really excited me because it is a little bit weird one with Sarr because he's been in the Championship a couple of times now and no club has come in, so there's a bit of a strange one there. But, that raw pace, I said it with Bailey before, he's the only player who's got that raw pace. Watkins is quick, but he's not that, that's not his main attribute. So definitely a winger, but again, Steven Gerrard doesn't play wingers, and that's a very strange one in itself. I'd love to break the bank for a number 8, I still would, despite the fact that we've brought in Dendoncker, I like that. And then I had a centre-back on there as well, like you touched on. But again, if Konsa and Mings are getting a record number of clean sheets in that lockdown season, I don't know. It's very strange what's happened to those two. Maybe Konsa in particular, especially this season, because I think Mings has had a very, very good start to the season. But yeah, that's a very weird one. Question here from Oliver off Instagram, which actually touches on McGinn. Question on McGinn's quality. Is he good enough to be playing for us, and is the captaincy affecting him? I've been very critical on McGinn, especially this season. I don't think he's been the same player since that injury in 2019. I think it was against Southampton around Christmas time. He was out for a fair few months, and I don't know what he is. I think we talked about it in private at the weekend, Simon, and I know he's not being played in the right position. I get that. I mean, look what he does for Scotland. But there's just something missing from McGinn's game, and he's been here since the Championship, and I just think he needs to level up if he wants to keep up with Villa. Not that, we're the best side in the world at the moment, but just the little things with him. It's his passing, first touch, especially against Southampton on Friday. He was tearing into challenges, potentially trying too hard. I just think he's really struggled for a long time now, McGinn, and if I'm being harsh, I think he's one of the first positions we need to upgrade on for sure, and the whole captaincy thing is a weird one itself. Is that what's affecting him? Because we've seen it with Mings. Take the captaincy off him. This was the theory behind it, and he becomes an instantly better player because he hasn't got to worry about anything else. He's got to worry on himself. So I don't know, have we just shifted the problem there from Mings to McGinn? I don't know, but I think McGinn has struggled for a long time for me.
Yeah, I don't know about the captaincy. I'm not sure. I know we were told this about it affected Mings' game, but I don't think Mings was even that bad last season, if I'm being honest. He wasn't. I think Konsa was worse than him last season, without a shadow of a doubt. And he wasn't sort of singled out. So I think there's been a lot made of Mings, if I'm being honest with you. And I think this season's proved it. He was out of the team first game of the season, and look how bad we were. And he comes straight back in, and he's been very good so far. And I don't know. I don't buy into all this with the captaincy, if I'm being honest. And so whether Mings has the armband or McGinn, I'm not sure it really has a massive effect, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, you've still got leaders out on the field, whether they're aware of the armband or not, to be honest. So I don't know about the captaincy. I think I sort of agree with you. I think there's elements to Ming's game which have not been good enough for a while. But then I was talking, like you said, we were talking about this on the weekend, and I still think though that ever since he came back from that injury, he's never ever been played in his right position. And you think about Euro players, would you play Jacob Ramsey in like a defensive midfield position? Because you wouldn't. He's an attacking midfielder. Same as John McGinn. I sort of feel for him a little bit that he's never ever played in that position. I mean, it's the position he excels in for Scotland. It's the position he scores goals in at international level, and it's the position he excelled in with Villa, first in the Championship, and then when we got promoted, he was in that sort of advanced midfield role under Dean Smith, and he was. Like we were talking the other day about letting shots fly at the goal, and he was getting on the score sheet and assists and stuff, and you don't ever see that from him anymore. And is he in his right position? And I don't ever think he is. He's not a defensive midfielder because he can't pass the ball well enough. He's not a possession based footballer. He shouldn't be playing defensive midfield. And then I don't think he's even really box to box because again you've got to have that element of sort of passing. And then in this Gerard's weird formation with the flat three in the middle, and he's covering either the left hand side or the right hand side, he ends up being at left back or right back more than he is in midfield. And so there's definitely elements for John McGinn to improve on. But I don't think we help him. I don't think he's ever been played in his right position for a good two and a half years now. And so for me, if you want to see the best out of John McGinn, maybe try and play to his strengths a little bit more.
That's true. And it is frustrating to watch, isn't it? Because we always talk about it. When we first got promoted, he was arriving late against Arsenal and scoring and making that darting run from midfield against Tottenham opening game of the season. But we never ever see, especially in the system, we don't see midfielders busting a gut to get in the box and arrive late and get on the end of crosses. We always seem to just pump it down the channel in it. It's up to Watkins to do something, and the midfielders are just sort of, just hovering around the halfway line. And it is really, really frustrating to watch because there is a play there. We've seen it, and we see it every single international break when John McGinn returns, having scored 2-3 goals for Scotland and get loads of assists. It is frustrating, and I do agree, to be fair. You do need to play him in that better position. I just think Gerard, with the talent we've got going forward, forward now. He's not going to start over Buendia, he's not going to start over Coutinho, and it's frustrating. I do feel sorry for him a little bit, but yeah, it's a strange one, McGinn. And then the next question actually follows on from that, from Jim on Twitter, says, how would you like to see us lining up, assuming that the worst, Kamara is out for a long period of time? Now, we're filming this on Tuesday the 20th, and as it stands, we haven't heard anything on Kamara, but it didn't look too good. We are hearing a few things that it's not too good. We've seen that typical tweet from Villa saying, get well soon, Kamara, with the praying hands emoji, which is never, never, never a good sign. But Simon, pretending that Kamara is out for a long time, which it seems that way, how would you line up?
I don't know the answer to the question, and the reason being is because, are we talking about, well, Steven Gerrard's the manager, or are we talking about somebody else? Because in Steven Gerrard's system, well, I don't know, because I don't think the system works. And so if you're asking me to pick a system, I'd go with like a two sort of defence midfielders, shielding the back four system, and then, you know, like an attacking front three, and then a striker. But I don't know whether we've even got the players to do that, though, because as we were just talking about, we've only got one winger in the entire squad, and so would that even work? I don't know. We've got Bailey, but then who plays on the other side? Because if you put Buendia there or Coutinho there, then they then end up being out of position, or same with Jacob Ramsey, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think obviously we brought Dendoncker in, so you'd expect him to get minutes in that sort of defensive. Well, no, it won't be that. Well, yeah, possibly in that defence midfield role. Although I don't think he ever was playing there for Wolves. Though I think he was more in sort of like a box to box sort of like, you know, sort of wide sort of midfield position. So it'd be interesting to see what Gerard's plans are with Dendoncker, to be honest. You might see the resurgence in Nakamura again, possibly. I wouldn't be that surprised if you saw him come back in. But I genuinely don't know. I feel like it's very much round pegs in square holes all the time, and I don't think how we set up is correct at all. I don't like this whole how the fullbacks are bombing on and then the midfielders covering right and left back. I think that's really ridiculous, because we leave so much space through the middle, and then we have Konza and Mings or whoever the centre half is under pressure. I just don't think it works, and then we don't create enough chances either. And so, well, yeah, in the current system, what do we do without Kamara? I've no idea, because I don't think it was right with Kamara, if I'm being honest. So I don't know is the answer.
Worrying one, and I've got a feeling that Luiz is going to go back to that 6, and nothing's really going to have changed from last season, because Dendoncker came on against Southampton. I don't remember him touching the ball, to be fair, but he went out to that right hand side of midfield, didn't he? And Luiz stayed in that number 6 role, which, I don't know, it's up to Gerard. He sees him in training every week about who would be better in that number 6 position, but it does worry me that we're just going to go back to the problems of last year, where we had a horrible midfield again. And don't get me wrong, it's been awful this year as well, but I just think, going back to Villa being messy, we're just messy at the moment, aren't we? And we haven't been really unlucky with injuries. Luca Dean has withdrawn from the France squad today. Matty Cash has got an injury he's been out for a while now. Kamara, it's just the list. We're just very unlucky. They signed 2 big players in the summer, in Carlos and Kamara, and they both look now to be out for a long period of time. So what can you do? It's really frustrating. And there's a question here actually on Twitter that comes in about Morgan Sanson. I just think, again, messy, very, very strange. I think 2 managers now, we've talked about it before, 2 managers now have frozen him out. We all thought that he was going to be the saviour, you know, that midfielder was signing, very bit of flair on the ball, but he's been here for a couple of years now, coming up to a couple of years. I know he's had injury problems, but we've never seen anything really from Morgan Sanson. And if 2 managers are going to freeze him out, there is something strange there with him, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think even in his cameo appearances, I don't think he's been great, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's ever showed anything that makes you think, oh yeah, Sanson's definitely going to get started in the next game. I don't think he's ever quite done that, and it's a shame, because yeah, you're right, he came in for decent money and from a Champions League side in Marseille, and you thought, yeah, he'll be really good. And he was supposed to come in to compete with McGinn, if you remember, and he never really has he? And as you say, I think with 2 managers clearly not liking him, there's something there. Whether it's his training performances, whether it's his attitude, I'm not too sure, but there's something behind the scenes that isn't quite right with Sanson, and I don't think I can't see him getting minutes. I know he was on the bench on Friday night, but I mean, going forward, you can't see him getting minutes really. I think he'll be gone either in January or next summer.
Again, another example of Villa splashing a lot of money on a player and us losing a lot of money on a player. Question coming in here. In light of recent discussion regarding Grealish's poor form, would you take him back, Simon?
Of course. What a ridiculous question. I mean, he was he was probably the best player who's played for Aston Villa for how long? Of course, you'd have him back. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think it's realistic?
No, not at all. No, it's not. I don't think it's realistic, and purely for the fact that if Jack Grealish was to leave Man City, then there'd be better clubs than Aston Villa in the queue for him.
Oh yeah.
And why wouldn't there? Like, okay, he hasn't set the world alight for Man City, but he's not also been absolutely terrible, has he? And so, I don't think it's realistic, if I'm being honest. I'd love it to be. I think one day Jack will come back to Villa. I don't see it being anytime soon. It'll be one of them ones when Villa get him back at the end of his career, sort of thing, like an Ashley Young or something like that. But yeah, I'd love him back. I think I was talking to you again on the weekend in private. I was saying how he was Aston Villa, wasn't he? And I just feel like all of our problems have mounted ever since he left. You know, we lost Jack and we lost Dean Smith in a few months as well. And Dean Smith lost his job, really, let's be honest, because we lost Jack so late in the window and we couldn't string any sort of wins together. And I just feel like the club had its sort of heart and soul ripped out, if I'm being honest. And that might sound really dramatic, and it probably does. And people would say, well, you need to move on, but he was so unique, wasn't he? And I think he epitomised everything Aston Villa was and is, sort of thing. And I think it's tough. And I think the fans who were angry at the time at him leaving, I think they've come round to see, well, actually, he left for a reason, and we'd all love him back. Let's be honest. I mean, if Villa put a statement out tonight saying Jack was coming back, you'd have people queuing up outside Villa Park, absolutely welcoming him back. And I'd be there. I'd be first in the queue. So I'd love him back, but I don't see it.
It's frustrating as well, because I went to Man City versus Dortmund last week in the Champions League, and I was 3 rows from the front. Jack Grealish was on my side. I could see him close up, and it was so frustrating because he just lacks that confidence, and he's in such a different environment to what he was at Villa. And the Man City fans were just grilling him at every opportunity, and it's such a massive shame. Like, he got the ball, he'd do a little bit of a dribble, and then he'd nervously pass it back. And obviously I don't watch enough of Man City to see if that's a normal thing for Grealish. I know he scored at the weekend against Wolves, but I don't know, I just think he's missing something, Grealish, and I don't know, like you said, I agree, I think he'll come back in some form, towards the end of his career, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon, because Man City wouldn't want to lose all that money that they'd already spent on him. So that's pretty much the end. We'll just talk about the next few fixtures. Actually, now we'll just have a chat about what's coming up. Obviously, Leeds is the first game after the international break. Then we've got Forest, Chelsea, Fulham, Brentford and Newcastle, which is a very, very, very busy October. I think for me, there's a lot of winnable games in there and a lot of opportunity for some decent points. I think coming up to the World Cup now, you've got a lot of winnable games in there, like I've said, and I think this is it for Gerrard now. This is it. I just can't see him getting sacked, but I think for him to sort of, come back from the difficulties at the start of this season, I think he's got to win a fair few of those games. And there's a lot of favourable ones in there. Leeds, Forest, our next 2 games. I know they're away from home, but they're sides that we should be beating. Si, how are you feeling going to that Leeds game then?
I'm not that confident, if I'm being honest. I still haven't seen anything from us this season, which suggests to me that things are going to change for the better anytime soon. And so I think we'll go there and be quite pragmatic again, try and sit deep and hit Leeds on the counter attack. And Leeds are a funny team. You don't know what you're going to come up against with Leeds. I think it depends on how we cope with their sort of press. Obviously they press you quite highly, and they're quite aggressive, aren't they? So it depends how we deal with that. I'm not hugely confident. I think looking at the fixtures, I think we need to take 9-10 points from those fixtures, if I'm being honest, to sort of keep Gerrard sort of going. But I mean, you know what I think about it, and I personally think he's on borrowed time. I think Gerrard knows that, if I'm being honest. It's just a feeling from around the whole club for me. It feels like, yeah, he's pulling a few results out by being extremely negative. But if you were the CEO or if you were the owner being serious, watching us at the moment, would you really think that, there's something positive to cling on to for the future? You can see that Stephen's building something at Aston Villa, because I mean, we're nearly a year into his reign. It'll be a year in November. So we're sort of 10.5 months into his reign, and we're now talking about how he's had to go back to basics only a month and a half into the season, and start playing this sort of pragmatic, negative sort of way, which to me it's concerning. And to be fair, I said it a few weeks ago that's what you had to do to get some results, and at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. We're all here to see Aston Villa win football matches, but it don't look good for a manager to be in charge for that long and have to revert back to something he was doing exactly nearly a year ago. All of his plans out the window, all of his summer work out the window, because we can't seem to string any sort of wins together or any sort of form together. I think he's on borrowed time, if I'm being honest with you, and I'd be surprised if the owners aren't sort of looking at the next move. But I just hope it's quick. Whatever happens, I hope it's quick, because there's managers out there at the moment who you might end up losing sort of sight of if you wait too long, because this is the time of year when clubs do start getting itchy feet and start sacking managers and in the hope of improvement. And so I don't know. I'm not one to be calling for managers' heads. I'll never do that, and I never have done that. But it's just a vibe I get. It's not a very good vibe at the moment around the Villa. I mean, we haven't even sold out for the last 2 games, which I can't believe that. I mean, I know the prices are high, and I know it's a cost of living crisis, but I can't believe that. I mean, when you talk about 20,000 people on the waiting list and how we're expanding Villa Park at the end of this year, and then all of a sudden we have 2 matches which aren't sold out, and a bit of a wake-up call, I think, because it doesn't take long for sort of fans to start dropping off, especially when they're paying 40, 50 quid a ticket. And so it's something for the owners to think about. Is this where we want to go? Is this definitely the path we want to go? And at the moment, I just don't see a path, if I'm being honest.
It just feels like we're just limping on the pitch. We're just sort of limping into every game and just trying to get over the line, and nothing's convincing, and we haven't seen a 90-minute full half decent performance for a long time now, and on the pitch does not back up what has happened around the club off the pitch in terms of, like you said, the stadium expansion and all this talk about Europe that we get in every single interview, and the prices going up. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm looking at single tickets to bring people to games with me, and you're looking at 50, 55 quid, and it's absolutely mental. And especially with what's going on at the world at the moment, would you honestly spend 55 quid if you're not lucky enough to have a season ticket? Would you spend 55 quid to come and watch that? Absolutely not. And like you said, it is worrying now. People might start falling off, losing interest over this winter. It's cold. Do you want to go out on a cold Tuesday to go and watch Villa limp over the line against Nottingham Forest or something like that? It's just not convinced at the moment. And you can win Southampton. You can win against Southampton and 4 points in our last 2 games. Okay, but not convincing. Not convincing at all. And I've still got a lot of worries. And I think October is big. October is a very, very big month. And then you've got a couple of games in November leading into this World Cup. I think this is a very, very important time now for Gerrard. And he's got this international break, although a lot of players are going away, to sort it out, get a plan. What are we going to do? Go into these next few games in October confident and see what we're about. What can we do? But yeah, I'm just not convinced, and I've still got a lot of worries about the Villa. So that's it from me and Simon. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on it. Thank you to Simon for coming on. Comment your thoughts on anything we've talked about in this video or anything you want to talk about in the comments. Let us know down below. Subscribe if you haven't already on the road to 50k. If you want to see more videos like this, me and Simon just chatting, or anybody else just chatting, please do let me know as well, because I enjoy doing them. Simon enjoys doing them. Hopefully you guys enjoy watching them. But without further ado, I will see you against Leeds United. Up the Villa boys.